Alright, welcome everybody to Creature Design, Shape, and Thumbnail Exploration. I'll just be discussing a couple different techniques, which are all kind of similar, but they're just variations of using silhouettes and symmetrical and asymmetrical thumbnails to produce a vast array and multiple amounts of thumbnails for creature design. It can really be used for anything, characters, creatures, and maybe even some industrial design related concepts. But it's just a quick, fun, easy way to produce a lot of different designs, and it'll kind of open your mind to outside the box thinking because it does touch upon abstract techniques, and it will produce shapes and designs and things that you might not otherwise have thought of if you had gone about it a different way. So I hope you guys find this informative, and please check back soon for future updates. Alright, so the first video that we have here is just going to discuss one easy, simple solution to creating thumbnails using line work. To begin, I have a simple grid created just to be able to better understand the breakup of the design. I'm going to lay down a center line and just lower the opacity of that. That's going to be on its own layer, just to allow me to better understand the breakup of the asymmetrical concept of this thumbnail. So to begin with, on the left side here, as you can see, I'm starting out and stuff from the base center line and just working out an abstract design with real world elements based on crustaceans, insects, and other invertebrate animals. It really doesn't have to make a lot of sense at this point. Really all you're focusing on is an interesting silhouette, interesting shapes, and as you can see me producing here, they can even be things that are, floating objects and basically shapes that have nothing to do with anything that's functional or plausible. Now, to begin with the opposite side here, you want to make this something that kind of flows well together, that it's similar to the opposing side that you've just created, but the whole point of this is to work towards something that is asymmetrical. I'm keeping similar elements of crustaceans, insects, and other types of real-world animals, invertebrates, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't have to be extremely complex. I'm throwing a couple little details here and there and stuff, but for the most part, it's the dominant shapes that really matter. From this point, I'm going to select 1/2 of this concept. All I'm doing is using a hotkey, and after I select it, I'm hitting Control C, Control V, which is basically just going to copy and paste. Then I'm hitting Control H, which I had created the hotkey for, to flip the image, and then make sure that you have your option set to snap, so that you can quickly just line up the two after you've basically mirrored the image. So it's just a very quick solution to using the mirrored effect. The whole point of it, though, is in the beginning to create an asymmetrical thumbnail so that you can then later produce very quick symmetrical versions of each opposing side of that concept. Here I'm just producing a duplicate layer, setting it to multiply to produce to up the values, and then here I'm just basically selecting the negative space using the magic wand tool. I'll invert the selection and then fill it with just a base tone, just so that you can better visualize and better see the the actual silhouette. But there you go, and that's 3 quick designs that you can use. You know, one's asymmetrical and 2 symmetrical versions. All right, so here we have a multitude of these silhouette thumbnails. Yeah, they started out as line work, which I'm going to show you here, but they're very random, they're very abstract, they might not make a lot of sense at this point, but once they're completed, you can focus on what makes a strong silhouette, which designs stand out, and at that point you can kind of determine the dominant shapes, the body, the legs, the heads. So starting here again, just like before, I already have completed line work, but I'm just using the same technique. I had taken a drawing that was asymmetrical, really starting off with no idea, you know, what was going to become of it. Just breaking it down the middle and making sure that, you know, there's similar elements in anatomy with the wings, the legs, and definitely wanting to make sure that they're going to match up at that center line. But here I'm just basically copying each side of the asymmetrical version, copy pasting, flipping, mirroring them, and producing the 2 symmetrical versions. The asymmetrical version you can still use for a creature design. It really just depends on what you're looking for as a final result. But the design that I singled out in this portion of the video here is what ultimately led to the streamlined gravity glider alien painting that was produced for ImagineFX Magazine. Now, the thing that I'm focusing on here, and again I'm going to use the fill layer to just allow myself to better visualize and better understand and see the silhouettes more clearly. But that's just, you know, a very fun, simple solution to, you know, roughing out abstract shapes, and, you know, eventually you can produce a creature design based off of that. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next portion coming up after this. Alright, in the final portion here, I'm basically going to use a textured brush, and this time I'm just going to create the silhouette itself, not focusing on line work. This time it's predominantly all just about silhouette. I don't want to create a completely black silhouette, or, you know, completely black shape. I do want a little bit of texture, a little bit of variation in of values and tones in there, just to allow a little bit more of a breakup and more options and stuff, just so I can read into it a little bit better. Again, though, it is predominantly all about a strong silhouette. You know, I might rough in line work very, very quickly and stuff, but for the most part, I'm just going to fill that in and focus on the silhouette itself. Again, here I have no idea what this is ultimately going to become. I don't know, other than what might appear as legs. For the most part, I don't know what is the head, what's going to really be the body. You know, really the general breakup of the body structure in terms of, you know, a torso, a head, you know, what's the tail end or the head. You know, but as you see me here now, the difference with using a silhouette compared to the line work example shown earlier is that you can very easily manipulate using either the crop tool, cut and paste, selection tool, and then again using light and dark, as you see me here and stuff, just breaking up areas with some white line work. And I'm constantly modifying things. But what I'm doing at the same time too is that as I'm modifying each version of this silhouette, if I see something that I like, I'm keeping it. I'm creating a new layer, and then I'll just reproduce it, copy paste it, save that layer, and then go ahead and modify additional areas of it. So again, back to the first portion of that silhouette, and now I'm using the warp tool, which is just a very simple solution to giving a quick modification to one side of this asymmetrical thumbnail. Again, using the white line work just to break up rough areas, maybe to distinguish, which limb or which portion of the shape is behind another, maybe what may become joints, and again, just having fun, really. At this point, it doesn't read as anything specific. I'm not going to be able to determine what's what until I basically have a better chance to look at all of the designs together, and figure out what I feel works best. And at that point, it can really become anything I want it to become. But again, I'm just focusing on interesting shapes. You can keep it simple, or you can go as extremely complex as you want. Right now, I'm just kind of fooling around with, what could potentially be legs, antenna, hair. It really again doesn't matter if it makes sense or not at this point. You just want to have fun. You can throw light and dark marks all around. You can have things floating off of the general dominant shape. You can just repeat patterns here too, and you'll make sense of it later on. But you just want interesting shapes, interesting patterns, and again, make sure that you're focusing on keeping it asymmetrical. Because now here I'm taking each of those designs that I really liked, and I'm just dropping, each one down beneath the other, and I'm lining them up for a purpose. So this last one I'm taking and I'm just deciding to modify a little bit further, again with the warp tool and stuff, and just erasing out and modifying and adding in a few additional areas here and there. After this though, now everything's lined up, I'm going to want to go back to that center line that I started off with when I'm creating the thumbnails to make them asymmetrical, so that I can then produce all 4 of those thumbnails and use that mirrored technique to go ahead and quickly produce 4 different versions, and then do the same thing again with the opposite side and utilize the asymmetrical thumbnail to produce those additional views. So if you include the asymmetrical versions, in the end, you're coming out with 12 concepts that you could use later on to basically produce, any kind of creature concept off of. Once again, this you can use this for character designs or anything else really. It probably works best with creatures, but there you go. That's 12 different concepts, and you can read into them any way you want. So we'll take this further, and I'm going to discuss a little bit about utilizing these dark silhouettes and how you can take that into an actual 3-dimensional version of the creature. Okay, so what we have here are three distinct symmetrical versions of silhouette thumbnails. These are complete silhouettes aside from little dots that might indicate where eyes might be present. That can always be changed and that can always be interpreted as something different once you begin the actual creature production process. Each one of these were produced again using the asymmetrical technique and just mirroring the center line. So they might kind of represent or mimic the Inkblot psychological test that psychologists perform. But that's good actually, because again, that's sort of how you read into it. They can really ultimately become anything you see fit. Anything that you're looking at can be eyes, legs, arms, heads, and even while you're producing the final concept, you can change anything you want. This is really just a way to start off with ideas. The one I'm going to go ahead and move along with is going to be the thumbnail in the center, but any one of these could end up creating an interesting concept that you might not otherwise have thought of if you were working out things already in a three-quarter perspective, or just drawing things out from scratch using line work. So thumbnails, asymmetrical thumbnails, symmetrical thumbnails are always a good way to just produce very quick, random, abstract designs that could ultimately become a very distinct and original idea that you might otherwise not have thought of. So we'll move forward after this. All right, moving along. Here you go. The concept that I had pointed out in the three symmetrical silhouette thumbnails. In the top right corner, you can see the little ink blot. Basically, I interpreted that to sort of mimic a crustacean, a crab of sorts. It's still a creature design, but again, what I'm focusing on are the dominant shapes. Immediately, whether they were meant to represent crab claws or not, that's sort of how I just read into it. So what you're going to do is basically just use the ink blot or the symmetrical thumbnail as a basis to start your concept. And you're going to utilize those dominant shapes of the silhouette to make up the creature design in a three-dimensional form. So from a three-quarter point of view, you can either rough it in the same manner as large black shapes, or if it's easier for you, you can use line work to rough out the anatomy and basically just sort of try and mimic the thumbnail, where you're basically obtaining inspiration from. All I did here was a very, very quick line work to sort of mimic those proportions and what I perceive to be dominant shapes of claws or some type of head structure with antenna or just additional appendages. And same goes for the lower portion of the creature, the abdomen and the leg structure. And I decided to just go ahead and use those eyes to represent the more defined concept here, and use those little white dots as the eyes or the location of the eyes for this creature. Very quickly after this, I just started to render in some rough values to just sort of break up the anatomy in depth. whether legs are behind something, or just to quickly establish a very dim light source, just to make sense of things a little bit better. So after this, we'll move forward into detailing. Alright, and here we are with the final concept from start to finish. Now, the thumbnails that you had seen in the first 3 portions, those were just examples of how to utilize symmetrical, asymmetrical mirroring of thumbnails, silhouettes, to really just produce a mass amount of ideas, sort of using that Inkblot technique, so that you can just run with whatever you feel is a strong silhouette, and that's really what you're focused on at that point. After you're working in the dominant shapes into a 3/4 view, based off of the initial thumbnail that you've chosen, now you're up to this point where you kind of need to make more prominent decisions, more distinct decisions that are going to establish body structure, more functionality, more plausibility, and just again more aesthetic appeal. So I hope that you guys found this informative, helpful, fun. If nothing else, I hope you guys had fun watching it. So hopefully I'll get to produce a couple more videos and check back soon. Thank you.